I never thought I'd become an entrepreneur. In fact, I spent most of my life actively avoiding it. The idea of business ownership seemed too risky, too complicated, and honestly, it just wasn't in the cards for someone like me. I was content with my stable job in marketing, doing the same thing day in and day out, collecting my paycheck and avoiding any sort of risk. But then something changed. Something that would alter the course of my life and push me into the world of entrepreneurship in a way I never expected. It all started about 4 years ago when my mom called me one evening, sounding frazzled. She had been working as a nurse for over 30 years, and a few weeks prior, she'd been diagnosed with a chronic condition that required expensive treatments. My dad had passed away a few years earlier, and she was struggling to keep up with medical bills while still working full-time. She didn't want to ask me for help, but it was clear she was at her breaking point. "Can you come over this weekend? I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaky. When I arrived at her house, she greeted me with a hug and immediately started talking about her financial worries. The treatments were draining her savings, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep going. My mom was always the strong one in our family, and hearing her so defeated hit me hard. She had spent her life taking care of everyone else, and now she was the one who needed help. "Mom, we'll figure this out," I reassured her, even though I had no idea how. Over the next few weeks, I started brainstorming ways to ease her financial burden. I knew I couldn't pay off all her bills on my own, but maybe there was a way I could help her make some extra money. I thought about side hustles, online businesses, anything that could provide her with some relief. But nothing felt right. One day, as I was scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon an ad for a course on starting an e-commerce business. It caught my attention because the person in the ad was speaking about how they had turned a small idea into a full-fledged online store. They mentioned that you didn't need to be tech-savvy to get started and that you could do it from the comfort of your own home. It sounded too good to be true, but something about it felt different. I felt a spark of curiosity that I hadn't felt in a while. I signed up for the course, thinking it would just be a way to kill time. I had no real intention of turning it into a business. After all, I was happy with my marketing job. But the more I learned about e-commerce, the more intrigued I became. The idea that I could start a business with minimal investment and run it from home started to seem like a real possibility. Maybe this was the answer to helping my mom. I dove into the course, absorbing everything I could. The first thing I learned was that e-commerce wasn't just about selling products. It was about finding a niche. That's when I realized that I could use my experience in marketing to target a specific audience. I had worked with small businesses before and knew the importance of understanding your customer. The next few weeks were a blur. I researched different products, suppliers, and business models. I eventually decided on a health and wellness niche, something that could tie into my mom's situation, but also be broad enough to attract a wide range of customers. I set up a website, found a supplier, and began the tedious process of setting up an online store. I remember feeling overwhelmed with the technical aspects of it all, but I refused to give up. It wasn't just about starting a business anymore. It was about creating something that could help my mom. After a few months of trial and error, my e-commerce store was live. It was nothing fancy, just a simple online shop with a handful of products. I didn't expect much. After all, I was still learning. But to my surprise, my first sale came in just a week later. I was ecstatic. I remember jumping up from my desk and running to tell my mom. She was skeptical at first, but when I showed her the sale notification, her eyes lit up. "That's amazing, honey," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "You really did it." It was a small win, but it was enough to keep me motivated. Over the next few months, I refined my marketing strategies, learned more about SEO and social media advertising, and started seeing consistent sales. I kept working on it after my regular job, staying up late and waking up early to manage the store. It was exhausting, but the thought of helping my mom kept me going. Then came the moment that changed everything. One day, I received an email from a supplier I had been working with, telling me they could no longer fulfill orders due to a supply chain issue. My heart sank. I had built my store around their products, and without them, I was left with nothing. It was a crushing blow, and for a few days, I felt like giving up. But then, I remembered my mom. I thought about how she had always pushed through tough times, no matter what. If she could fight through her health struggles, surely I could fight through this setback. I began searching for new suppliers and products, and after weeks of frustration, I found a new supplier with better quality products and faster shipping times. I revamped my website and launched a new marketing campaign. The next few months were a whirlwind. Sales started to pick up, and my store began to gain traction. I hired my first employee, a virtual assistant, to help with customer service and order fulfillment. By the time my store hit its first six-figure revenue, I knew I was onto something big. I was no longer just trying to help my mom. I was building a legitimate business. My mom, who had once been skeptical, was now my biggest cheerleader. She helped with packing orders and even started offering advice on customer service. It became a family project, and the sense of pride we both felt was indescribable. As the business continued to grow, I quit my marketing job to focus on it full-time. I expanded my product offerings, improved my website, and invested in better marketing strategies. The business became my full-time job, and I realized that I had gone from someone who never thought they'd be an entrepreneur to a successful business owner. Today, my business is thriving, and my mom is doing better than ever. She's no longer burdened by medical bills, and she has her own income stream from helping with the business. We've even started planning for the future, looking into expanding internationally and creating new product lines. Looking back, I can hardly believe how far I've come. I went from avoiding entrepreneurship to building a successful e-commerce store that not only helped my family, but also gave me a sense of purpose and accomplishment. It wasn't easy, and there were many times when I doubted myself. But I learned that sometimes the biggest rewards come from taking risks and stepping out of your comfort zone. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in my life, I'm excited about it. And it all started with one simple decision: to take a chance, to learn something new, and to build something that could make a difference. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I started my business with nothing but a vision, a laptop, and an unshakable belief that I could make it. In 2015, I had just turned 24 and was working at a dead-end office job that barely paid the bills. I had no savings, no rich relatives, and no prior experience in entrepreneurship. But what I did have was a burning desire to escape the 9-to-5 grind and create something of my own. The idea for my business came to me one night after a frustrating day at work. I had spent hours organizing a spreadsheet for my boss, dealing with pointless meetings, and barely getting any recognition for the effort I put in. I was so fed up that when I got home, I pulled out my laptop and started browsing ideas for businesses I could start. I've always had a passion for tech, and after some digging, I stumbled upon the world of app development. The more I read, the more I realized that creating an app could be a game changer. But there was one problem: I didn't know the first thing about coding. I didn't even have the money to hire a developer. But my mind was made up. I was going to figure it out, no matter what. For the next few months, I spent every free minute teaching myself to code. I started with the basics: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and slowly began to build small projects. It was grueling work. There were times I wanted to throw my laptop out the window in frustration, but I kept going, refusing to give up. I knew that this was my shot at something bigger, and I wasn't going to waste it. One day, after about 6 months of self-learning, I finally felt ready to try building my first app. It was nothing fancy, just a simple task management app, but I was excited to see if I could make it work. I spent weeks designing, coding, and testing it. The whole process was a roller coaster of emotions, moments of excitement followed by waves of self-doubt. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I was committed. When the app was finally finished, I launched it on the App Store. I didn't have any marketing budget, no social media following, and no business connections. My first attempt to market the app was simply sharing it with friends and family. I posted it on my personal social media accounts, hoping for a few downloads. To my surprise, I got a handful of downloads and some positive feedback from users. It wasn't much, but it was a start. At this point, I realized that I needed to get more serious about marketing. I started researching app promotion strategies, reading articles, and watching YouTube videos on how to grow an app's user base. I learned about ASO, App Store optimization, social media ads, influencer marketing, and even paid promotions. I also started reaching out to bloggers and reviewers in the tech space, offering them free access to my app in exchange for a review. Slowly, the app started gaining traction. Within a few months, my app had gone from a handful of downloads to several thousand. It wasn't overnight success, but I could see the momentum building. I decided to double down on my efforts and released regular updates, added new features, and improved the user experience based on feedback. Each improvement made the app more appealing, and each time I updated it, my user base grew even more. But just when things started to feel like they were going well, I hit a major roadblock. One day, I received an email from Apple saying that my app had been removed from the App Store due to a violation of their guidelines. I was devastated. The app one had worked so hard on was now gone, and I didn't know if I could get it back on the platform. I spent the next several weeks reviewing Apple's guidelines and trying to figure out what went wrong. Eventually, I discovered that one of the features in my app was deemed to be in violation of their policy. I quickly made the necessary changes and resubmitted the app. Getting the app back online was a huge relief, but it made me realize how fragile this whole thing could be. I couldn't afford to make any more mistakes. From then on, I was extra cautious with every update, ensuring that I followed all of Apple's guidelines to the letter. It taught me the importance of attention to detail, and it also taught me not to take anything for granted. One wrong move, and I could lose everything. As my app continued to grow, I started to gain more confidence. I began working on other projects and expanded my focus from just app development to creating a suite of tools for small businesses. I wanted to help entrepreneurs like myself who were struggling to find affordable and effective tools to run their businesses. I knew there was a market for it. I had been that entrepreneur once. Over time, I built a small team of developers and marketers. I could now afford to pay for talented people to help me grow the business. We launched new products, refined existing ones, and focused on customer satisfaction. The company was finally starting to feel like a legitimate business, and I began to see the financial rewards of my hard work. By 2020, 5 years after I had launched my first app, my company was generating 6 figures in revenue. I had gone from barely scraping by to building a profitable business. I had learned so much along the way, not just about coding and development, but also about resilience, perseverance, and the power of taking risks. The road to success hadn't been easy, but it had been incredibly rewarding. But even as the business grew, I knew that I couldn't rest on my laurels. I had to keep pushing, keep innovating, and keep learning. I started to look at other industries and explored new opportunities for growth. The more I learned, the more I realized how much I didn't know and how much I still had to learn. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, I embraced it. The journey was far from over. In 2022, I decided to pivot and expand into the world of e-commerce. I developed a platform that combined my tech knowledge with my newfound passion for entrepreneurship. The goal was to help small businesses get online and grow their sales through automation and smart technology. It wasn't easy, but I knew that if anyone could pull it off, it was me. With my experience, determination, and a talented team behind me, I knew we could make it work. Today, my company is thriving. We've expanded into multiple industries and continue to grow every day. I still have a long way to go, but looking back at where I started, with nothing but an idea and a lot of determination, I can't help but feel proud of what I've accomplished. It hasn't been easy, and there have been countless challenges along the way, but I wouldn't trade this journey for anything. If there's one thing I've learned through this whole experience, it's that success doesn't come overnight. It's about taking small steps every day, learning from mistakes, and never giving up. If I can do it, anyone can. I always believed that success was for people who had it all figured out. The ones with money in the bank, fancy cars, and the power to decide their own destiny. My journey started when I realized how wrong I was, and how it took a simple leap of faith to change everything. It was 2017, and I had just turned 24. I was working in a dead-end job that barely paid my rent and student loans. I had dreams, of course, but they always seemed distant. I often daydreamed about starting a business, but each time I tried to make sense of how to go about it, my brain would freeze up. I kept thinking, I'm not smart enough, I don't have enough money, and I don't even know where to start. It was a vicious cycle of self-doubt. Then one evening, my life changed. I was sitting on my couch scrolling through social media when I saw a post from a guy I used to know in high school. He had started a small online business selling custom t-shirts. Now, a few years later, his Instagram was flooded with pictures of him traveling the world, meeting celebrities, and promoting his brand. He was living the dream. I didn't know much about him, but seeing that post lit a spark in me. If he could do it, why couldn't I? That night, I spent hours on Google. How do I start an online business? What's the best platform to sell? How much money do I need to get started? I came across drop shipping. For those unfamiliar with it, drop shipping is a retail fulfillment method where you don't need to keep products in stock. Instead, when a customer buys something from your store, you purchase the item from a third-party supplier who ships it directly to the customer. It sounded perfect for someone like me, who didn't have a lot of capital to invest in inventory. I was nervous but excited. The next few days were spent watching endless YouTube videos, reading blog posts, and learning everything I could about the process. I decided that I would sell phone accessories. The market seemed huge, and there were plenty of suppliers that offered affordable products. The next hurdle was setting up the website. I had no prior experience with web design, but I figured I could figure it out. After a lot of trial and error, I launched my store. I was officially in business. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement. I made my first sale after just 2 days, and I couldn't believe it. I told everyone I knew, my family, my friends, even some random people on Facebook. The rush of seeing someone buy something from my site was beyond words. But as much as I was celebrating that first sale, the reality hit quickly. My website was barely getting any traffic, and the few sales I made weren't enough to cover the expenses of running the store. I realized I needed to learn about marketing, especially paid advertising. I dove headfirst into Facebook and Instagram ads, trying different targeting methods, ad copy, and visuals. But every time I thought I had it figured out, my campaigns would flop. It was disheartening. For a while, I thought about quitting. I wondered if I was just wasting my time. But something inside me kept pushing forward. I wasn't going to let failure define me. I kept experimenting, refining my approach, and making mistakes along the way. Slowly, things began to improve. It was about 6 months into my journey when I finally hit my first breakthrough. I had found a niche in phone cases with unique, personalized designs. It wasn't just any phone case. It was a case that allowed customers to upload their own photos and designs. It took off like wildfire. People loved the idea of having a phone case that was as unique as they were. Sales started coming in steadily, and my profits grew each month. The next challenge was scaling. I couldn't handle the influx of orders alone, so I outsourced customer service and hired a few people to help with the day-to-day operations. I had to adapt quickly, learning about logistics, inventory management, and even building a small team. Running a business was nothing like I expected. There were countless sleepless nights, problems that popped up out of nowhere, and moments where I felt completely overwhelmed. But with every challenge, I learned something new. 1 year after launching, I was able to quit my day job. I was living the life I had only dreamed about. I was working from home, running my business, and making a profit. The lifestyle I once envied was now my reality. But even with all the success, I never forgot the struggles of the early days. I knew that the business could fall apart at any moment if I didn't keep adapting and improving. In the second year of running my business, I decided to diversify my product offerings. I started adding accessories, apparel, and home goods. I also introduced a subscription service where customers could receive exclusive products every month. It was a big risk, but it paid off. The business grew, and my brand started to gain more recognition in the market. Eventually, I expanded to international markets, shipping my products worldwide. Looking back, it feels surreal to see how far I've come. I went from someone who didn't know where to start to running a profitable business that has given me the freedom to live life on my own terms. But more than the money, the true reward has been the lessons I've learned along the way. I've learned that there is no such thing as the perfect time to start. I've learned that success isn't an overnight event, but a journey filled with trial and error. I've learned that failure isn't something to fear, but something to embrace, as it's the key to growth. And most importantly, I've learned that if you keep moving forward, even when it seems impossible, the odds will eventually be in your favor. As of now, my business is thriving. I'm in a much better place financially, and I have the freedom to spend my time on the things that matter most to me. My family is proud of what I've achieved, and I have the satisfaction of knowing that I created something from scratch. But the most rewarding part of this journey has been helping others. I've started a mentorship program where I teach aspiring entrepreneurs the same principles that helped me succeed. It feels great to pay it forward. I never imagined that one decision, one night spent scrolling through social media, would lead to everything I have today. I'm living proof that no matter where you start, with persistence, learning, and a little bit of risk, you can turn your dreams into reality. I was 23, fresh out of college, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing with my life. Like many recent grads, I thought I had it all figured out, but reality hit me hard. I had this shiny degree, but no job, and frankly, no clue how to use it. I spent months bouncing between dead-end jobs, all while trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. I remember the moment it all changed. I was sitting in my small apartment, scrolling through social media, when I saw an ad for an online course on how to build your own online business. It was one of those ads with a perfectly curated sales pitch, bright colors, motivational music, and a smiling face talking about how they went from broke to six figures in a year. Normally, I would have scrolled past, but something about it caught my attention. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe I was just tired of the same old grind. I signed up. The first few lessons were basic and repetitive, but they planted a seed in my mind that started to grow. I realized that the world had changed. Traditional 9-to-5 jobs were no longer the only way to make a living. People were making money online, doing what they loved. I could do that too. Or at least, I thought I could. The idea that sparked in me was simple. I wanted to create something that would help other people, specifically other college grads who were struggling to find work. I had no experience in business, marketing, or coding, but I figured, how hard could it be? Little did I know, I was about to dive into something far more challenging than I ever imagined. I decided to start an online business, but I didn't have a clear idea of what exactly I wanted to sell. I wanted to do something that felt authentic, something that wasn't just about making money, but also about solving a problem. After some brainstorming, I landed on the idea of creating a career coaching platform for recent graduates. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was a niche that I could relate to, having been a recent grad myself. I spent the first few months building a website, well, more like a simple landing page, and figuring out how to design content. I didn't have the money to hire experts, so I used free tools, YouTube tutorials, and anything I could find online. It was slow, painful, and often discouraging. I kept thinking, why am I doing this? I have no idea what I'm doing. At one point, I almost gave up. I remember sitting in front of my laptop, overwhelmed with the number of things I had to learn. I didn't know how to market my services, how to write good copy, or even how to handle taxes. But then, I got an email from a potential client, someone who had seen my landing page and wanted to schedule a coaching session. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me going. I worked with that first client for about an hour, helping them polish their resume and prep for interviews. It was a small victory, but it felt huge. I thought to myself, maybe this could actually work. As the months passed, I started to get a few more clients, but it wasn't easy. I faced every obstacle you can imagine. I spent countless hours learning marketing strategies, building a social media presence, and writing blog posts. I also had to deal with feelings of imposter syndrome. Every time I saw a more established career coach online, I wondered, what makes me think I can do this? But I pushed through, reminding myself that I was genuinely trying to help people and that there was room for everyone in the market. The breakthrough came when I decided to create a digital course for recent grads. I realized that one-on-one coaching was great, but it was time-consuming and not scalable. I needed a way to reach more people. The course would be a comprehensive guide on how to land your first job after graduation, with lessons on everything from writing a killer resume to mastering job interviews. I invested in the course creation process, pouring all my savings into hiring freelancers to help with video editing, course design, and even voiceovers. When the course launched, I had no idea if anyone would buy it. But within the first month, I sold 50 copies. That may not sound like a lot, but it was huge for me. It meant that people were actually willing to pay for something I had created. That's when I realized that this business was more than just a side project. It was becoming a legitimate venture. Over the next year, I continued to refine the course, add more content, and invest in my marketing efforts. I built a community around my brand, hosting webinars and offering free content to engage my audience. Slowly but surely, the business started to grow. It was an overnight success, but it was steady, and it felt like I was finally on the right path. The turning point came when I had the opportunity to work with a major university's career services department. They wanted to incorporate my course into their resources for students. This partnership opened doors for me that I hadn't even imagined. Suddenly, I was getting emails from professors, schools, and companies asking if they could use my course for their students. Fast forward to today, and my business is thriving. I'm no longer struggling to make ends meet. I'm able to help hundreds of students every year and have even expanded my offerings to include one-on-one coaching, group sessions, and consulting for universities. I never could have predicted how far my little idea would take me. It still feels surreal when I look back and realize how much my life has changed. I think the most important lesson I learned through this journey is that success doesn't come from having the best idea or the most experience. It comes from persistence, learning from failure, and being willing to take risks, even when you're unsure of yourself. I didn't have any special skills when I started this business, but I was willing to put in the work and figure it out along the way. So, if you're out there thinking about starting something, even if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, trust me, you're not alone. Take the leap. Learn as you go. The worst thing that can happen is that you'll fail, but even failure is a valuable lesson. Keep going, and you might just surprise yourself. This is a story about how I went from being broke, working multiple dead-end jobs, to building a six-figure business in under 2 years, all while living in a one-bedroom apartment with my dog. I know it sounds like one of those rags to riches stories you've probably read before, but trust me, this one is different. It's the real deal, and it's not about luck or some secret formula. It's about grit, persistence, and doing whatever it takes to make things happen. To start, let me give you a little background on me. I grew up in a small town where the most ambitious thing anyone ever talked about was working at the local factory or opening a mom-and-pop shop. No one really had dreams of building big businesses or becoming entrepreneurs. The idea of running a successful company seemed far-fetched, even impossible, for people like us. I graduated high school and ended up stuck in the same small-town mentality. I tried going to college, but I dropped out after 2 semesters. I wasn't a bad student, but the rigid structure of traditional education just wasn't for me. So, I bounced between odd jobs, retail, waiting tables, doing construction work, and even driving for Uber. There were weeks where I barely made enough money to pay rent. And that was the reality for years. I hated it. But I always had this itch, this feeling that there had to be more to life than just surviving from paycheck to paycheck. I would scroll through social media, seeing all these successful entrepreneurs living the dream, and it would drive me crazy. I wanted to know how they got there. In 2019, I decided to take a huge leap of faith. I wanted to start an online business, but I had no clue where to begin. So, I turned to Google and YouTube, which led me down the rabbit hole of side hustles and passive income. At first, I dabbled in a bunch of things: affiliate marketing, dropshipping, and even selling digital products. But each time I tried something new, it felt like I was throwing spaghetti at the wall. I couldn't get anything to stick. In hindsight, I realized I was spread too thin. I was chasing after shiny objects, hoping one would magically work, but I wasn't truly committed to any of them. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to focus on building a business that I actually cared about. I decided to go all in on a niche that I was passionate about: fitness. I'd always been into working out, and after doing some research, I realized that people were making a killing by selling fitness programs, workout plans, and nutrition guides. I thought to myself, I can do this. I can create something that helps people get in shape. I started by creating a fitness guide based on my own personal workout routine. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, just a basic plan that I had used to get myself into shape. I wasn't expecting it to be a big hit, but I figured it was a good starting point. I spent a couple of weeks writing and editing the guide, making sure it was polished and professional. Then I launched it on Gumroad and shared it with my small circle of friends and family. To my surprise, people started buying it. Not a lot at first, maybe 1 or 2 sales a week, but it was a start. That's when I realized that the key to success wasn't just about having a product, it was about building an audience. So, I shifted my focus from just creating products to actively growing my online presence. I started posting on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, sharing my fitness journey, workout tips, and motivational content. I wasn't trying to sell anything, at least not at first. I just wanted to build a community of people who were interested in fitness, just like me. Slowly but surely, my followers grew. I spent hours every day engaging with people, answering questions, and providing value. After a few months, I felt like I had built enough of an audience to launch my first paid product. I created an online fitness course and an ETH program that included workout routines, meal plans, and coaching. I priced it at $99, which I thought was reasonable given the amount of content I was offering. I launched the course to my email list and social media followers. I didn't expect much, but within the first week, I sold 10 courses. That may not sound like a lot, but it was enough to show me that there was real potential in this business. I reinvested that money into paid ads, improving my website, and creating more content. By the end of the first year, I had made my first $100,000. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast, but it was real money. I quit my last part-time job, and for the first time, I could fully focus on my business. I was still living in that one-bedroom apartment, but now, instead of stressing over bills, I was thinking about how to scale my business even further. The next step was expanding my product offerings. I created a subscription-based model for exclusive content, coaching calls, and access to a private community. The subscription model allowed me to generate consistent monthly income, which gave me more stability and the ability to plan for growth. I also started offering one-on-one coaching for a higher price, which became another revenue stream. The real breakthrough came when I started collaborating with other fitness influencers. I reached out to people with larger followings and proposed mutually beneficial partnerships. We did joint webinars, Instagram Lives, and promotions for each other's products. That strategy led to an influx of new followers and customers. I was no longer just a small-time fitness entrepreneur. I was becoming an authority in my niche. Fast forward to today, and my business has grossed over $1.5 million in revenue. I've built a small team, and we now offer a wide range of products, from fitness programs to apparel and even branded equipment. I've also expanded into new markets, including nutrition and wellness. The best part? I'm still doing what I love. I wake up every day excited to work, knowing that I'm helping people achieve their fitness goals while running a thriving business. I'm no longer just surviving, I'm thriving. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? It's simple. Don't give up. If you're passionate about something, go all in. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to happen overnight. But if you're willing to put in the work, the results will come. You don't need to be a genius or have some secret advantage. All you need is perseverance, a willingness to learn, and the belief that you can make it happen. The journey won't be easy, but I promise you, it will be worth it. I always believed that success came from hard work, and I worked hard, very hard. I grew up in a middle-class family where ambition was praised, and hard work was the foundation of everything. My parents were always there for me, teaching me the values of perseverance and dedication. However, no one told me that those qualities alone would not guarantee success. They never told me that timing, risk, and opportunity were just as important. My story starts with a leap of faith that I never thought I'd take. After finishing college with a degree in business management, I thought I had everything figured out. I joined a reputable corporate firm straight out of school. I was climbing the corporate ladder, doing everything by the book. I worked 70-hour weeks, took every extra assignment, and stayed late when needed. In many ways, I was the ideal employee, the one everyone relied on. But over time, the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't my dream. I wasn't building something of my own. I was just helping someone else build their dream. The truth is, I'd always had a fascination with entrepreneurship, but it felt too risky. It seemed safer to stay in the comfort of a steady job with benefits and the promise of a promotion every few years. But deep down, I knew that the only way I could really be in control of my life was to take a leap. And so, after 3 years in corporate hell, I quit my job. The first few months after quitting were a whirlwind of self-doubt, fear, and confusion. I spent most of my time reading business books, taking online courses, and trying to learn everything I could about entrepreneurship. I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be my own boss. I tried to start a few small businesses. The first was an online store selling novelty t-shirts. I invested $2,000 in designing, marketing, and setting up a website. I sold exactly 3 shirts in the first 3 months. I lost all that money, and I felt like a failure. I had read that most businesses fail in the first year, but I didn't think it would happen to me. I tried again. This time, I focused on a dropshipping business. I researched suppliers, built a new website, and started marketing on social media. My sales numbers initially skyrocketed, but that excitement was short-lived. The margins were razor-thin, and customer service was a nightmare. I couldn't keep up with the constant complaints and returns. Once again, I lost money, and the pressure was unbearable. I thought about going back to corporate life, but decided to give it one last shot. I took a step back and looked at everything I had tried. One thing I had been doing consistently was researching the growing trends in various industries. The one that kept popping up was the booming field of home fitness. People were becoming more health conscious, and with the pandemic, home workout equipment was in demand. I saw an opportunity to create something different in this market, a subscription service that sent users a different workout plan and exercise gear every month. It wasn't a unique concept by any means, but I thought I could put my own spin on it. I figured if I focused on personalization, quality content, and a strong community, I could stand out. It took about 6 months of planning before I actually launched the business. I spent every waking hour crafting the perfect marketing campaign, building a website, and reaching out to potential influencers who could help promote the brand. I had to bootstrap everything. There was no venture capital, no investors, just me and my savings. It was stressful, and there were moments when I seriously doubted myself. The initial months after launch were discouraging. Sales were slow, and there were problems with the fulfillment side of things. I had a few angry customers who demanded refunds, and my website crashed a couple of times under unexpected traffic. But something strange started to happen. Customers began sharing their experiences on social media. They started to tag us in their posts, and the word began to spread. By the end of the first year, the business had doubled its revenue. The real breakthrough came when a well-known fitness influencer with millions of followers endorsed our service. The floodgates opened, and sales soared. I wasn't prepared for the success, and I had to scramble to keep up with the demand. But by then, I had a team of dedicated employees who were just as passionate about the brand as I was. We streamlined our operations, focused on customer satisfaction, and made sure our products were top-notch. We slowly began to build a community around the brand, with people sharing their progress, workouts, and personal stories. It wasn't just about selling fitness equipment anymore. It was about building a lifestyle. Today, my company generates 7 figures in annual revenue, and we're still growing. It hasn't been a smooth ride. There have been plenty of bumps along the way. I've learned that entrepreneurship isn't just about hard work. It's about finding the right timing, taking calculated risks, and persevering through the tough times. The most important lesson I've learned is that failure is not the end, but merely a stepping stone to success. If I had given up after my first 2 failed businesses, I wouldn't be where I am today. Now, I spend my time mentoring young entrepreneurs who are starting their journeys, helping them avoid the mistakes I made. I try to be as honest as possible about the challenges and the sacrifices. There's no such thing as an overnight success, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. Entrepreneurship is about grit, resilience, and adapting to change. It's about taking risks when you don't have all the answers, and trusting that if you keep moving forward, something will click. I look back on those early days of struggling with online businesses and laugh at how naive I was. But I wouldn't change a thing. All those failures, all those sleepless nights, taught me the lessons I needed to learn. They were the foundation of the success I have now. The truth is, no one ever really knows what they're doing when they start. They just keep going until they figure it out. If you're reading this and you're thinking about quitting your job to start your own business, I can't tell you that it's going to be easy. But I can tell you this. If you're passionate, if you work hard, and if you're willing to fail a few times along the way, it can absolutely be worth it. Success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about learning how to get back up after you fall. I grew up in a small town where the only thing I knew for sure was that I wanted more than what I saw around me. I was always the dreamer, the one who believed there had to be more out there than the dull routine of small-town life. My family didn't have much, but they were hardworking and did their best to make sure I had what I needed. However, their idea of success was quite different from mine. For them, success was a steady job, a house with a picket fence, and a comfortable life. But I had bigger dreams. I wanted to build something, to create something from scratch that would change my life and the lives of others. After high school, I moved to the city, hoping that being around more people would open up opportunities. I didn't have much money to my name, just a small savings account from odd jobs I had worked since I was a teenager. I rented a small apartment in a not-so-great part of town and started applying for jobs at every company I could think of. I didn't care what the job was as long as it paid, and I could learn something new. I landed a job as a sales associate at a tech startup that was just starting to make waves in the industry. The work was grueling, and the hours were long, but it was also a wake-up call for me. I quickly realized that success in business was not about having a great product or service. It was about knowing how to sell it, how to market it, and how to connect with people. The startup wasn't doing well financially, and I could sense the tension in the office. The founder had a great vision, but they struggled with execution. I saw opportunities that they didn't. I could tell that their sales team was undervalued and that they weren't leveraging their strengths. One night, I stayed late in the office, creating a proposal for the founder on how they could rebrand and restructure their sales strategy. I had no formal training in marketing or branding, but I had spent countless hours reading about business models, marketing techniques, and branding strategies on blogs and forums. When I presented it to the founder, he was impressed. I could see the wheels turning in his head as he realized the potential of what I had outlined. Over the next few months, I worked directly with the sales team to implement the new strategy. The results were staggering. Sales doubled, and the company's valuation skyrocketed. The founder offered me a more prominent role in the company, but I declined. I realized that if I could do it for someone else, I could do it for myself. So, I left the startup, took a deep breath, and decided to start my own business. I had no clue what I was doing at first. I remember sitting in my small apartment, staring at my computer screen, trying to figure out what kind of business I wanted to create. I knew that I loved tech and marketing, but there were already thousands of tech startups out there. I had no unique angle. So, I did what I knew best. I kept reading, kept learning, and kept networking. Then one day, I came across a niche market that had been largely overlooked, a platform for small businesses to create their own e-commerce websites with minimal effort. There were a few competitors in the market, but they all focused on large companies and had complicated pricing structures. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was a massive gap in the market. I wanted to create a platform that allowed anyone, no matter their technical knowledge, to create a website and start selling their products online. I spent the next few months researching, designing, and building the product. I used my savings to hire a couple of developers who could help bring my vision to life. The process was long and stressful. There were many sleepless nights, and countless times I questioned whether I was making a huge mistake. But I knew that if I wanted this to work, I had to keep pushing forward. The platform was finally ready, and I launched it with little fanfare. I didn't have a marketing budget, and I didn't know how to reach potential customers. I turned to the online communities I had been a part of for years: forums, Reddit threads, and Facebook groups. I spent hours every day answering questions, helping people, and offering free advice. Slowly but surely, people started noticing my platform. Word of mouth spread, and I began getting sign-ups. At first, it was slow, but then things started to pick up. As the customer base grew, so did the challenges. I had to hire more employees, scale the infrastructure, and deal with customer support issues. But the more challenges I faced, the more I learned. I surrounded myself with people who were smarter than me, and I made sure to listen to their advice. I built a strong team, and we worked tirelessly to improve the product. A year into the business, I received an email from a major venture capital firm. They had been following my platform's growth and wanted to invest. At first, I was skeptical. I didn't want to give up control of my business, but the offer was tempting. After a lot of deliberation and discussions with my team, I decided to accept the investment. The funds allowed us to expand more rapidly, improve the product, and scale in ways I had only dreamed of. By the end of the second year, my platform had gone from a small startup to a company with over 100,000 active users. We had raised several rounds of funding and built a solid reputation in the industry. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still plenty of ups and downs, but the business was finally growing, and it felt real. Looking back, I realized that it wasn't the product or the idea that made the business successful. It was the willingness to take risks, to fail, and to learn from those failures. It was about seeing opportunities where others didn't, and it was about being relentless in the pursuit of my vision. Now, several years later, my company is one of the leading platforms in the e-commerce space. We've helped thousands of small businesses launch their own online stores, and I've had the privilege of watching some of them grow into massive enterprises. But despite all the success, I never forget where I came from. I remember the long nights, the doubts, and the struggle of starting from nothing. I guess the lesson I've learned is that success isn't about having all the answers. It's about persistence, learning from mistakes, and adapting. It's about taking that first step, even when you're scared, and believing in yourself, even when others don't. It's about doing the work, day in and day out, until one day, you wake up and realize that you've built something incredible. I never intended to become an entrepreneur. I was an average corporate drone, a mid-level marketing manager at a mid-sized tech firm, and I was perfectly okay with that. My job was stable, the pay was decent, and I had a reliable rhythm to my life. That all changed because of a lemon. Let me explain. About 3 years ago, my wife and I decided to start eating cleaner. One of our habits was squeezing fresh lemon into water every morning. One day I was standing in the kitchen before work, half awake, trying to squeeze a stubborn lemon, and it slipped out of my hand and shot across the room like a damn cannonball. It knocked over a mug, shattered it, and splattered pulp across the fridge. I stood there, sticky and swearing, and muttered, "There has to be a better way." That moment stuck with me. I Googled lemon squeezers. There were plenty out there, but none that looked good, were easy to clean, and didn't require Hulk-level grip strength. Over the next few weeks, I casually started sketching out ideas for a better citrus press. Not because I planned on building one, but because I was annoyed. Then COVID hit. Like a lot of people, I was stuck at home, bored, working remotely. I pulled out the sketches and started tinkering. I ordered a basic 3D printer, watched YouTube videos, and made prototype after prototype in my garage. Eventually, I created a weird-looking but oddly satisfying lever-action citrus press. No batteries, dishwasher safe, worked on all citrus sizes. I called it the Citrus Tap. It wasn't a product yet, but it worked. I showed it to my wife. She said, "You should sell this." I laughed. To who? Lemon enthusiasts? Still, I posted a demo video on TikTok just for fun. It got 11,000 views in a day, then 40,000. I made another video comparing the Citrus Tap to a traditional juicer. It got 200,000 views and nearly 5,000 comments, most saying, "Where can I get this?" and "Shut up and take my money." I hadn't made a single unit for sale yet. That week I stayed up late researching how to actually manufacture something. I joined Reddit forums, watched Skillshare classes, and emailed manufacturers on Alibaba. I used Upwork to hire a 3D designer to refine my 3D model, and I spent $1,300, nearly all of my savings, on an initial mold from a small factory in Shenzhen. Minimum order quantity? 500 units. I called in a favor with my cousin who designed packaging for a local grocery brand. She made me a box layout in exchange for a case of wine. I built a Shopify store, slapped up some product shots taken on my iPhone, and quietly launched the Citrus Tap to my 4,000 new TikTok followers. I priced it at $24.99, hoping to break even. I sold out in 2 days. I hadn't even figured out shipping logistics. I spent that entire weekend printing labels, bubble wrapping units, and arguing with a USPS clerk about parcel dimensions. My tiny garage looked like an Amazon warehouse run by a raccoon. Word started to spread. Influencers reached out for free samples. A food blogger in Atlanta featured the Citrus Tap in her Best Kitchen Tools of the Year list. Orders climbed to 2,000. I quit my job. That's when the real trouble began. My supplier ghosted me after the third batch. Vanished. Emails bounced. I had 800 back orders and no product. I refunded everyone, issued a groveling apology email, and took a mental hit that nearly killed the dream. But something weird happened. People responded kindly. They liked the apology. One woman even said, "If you ever relaunch, let me know. I want to." I found a new supplier in Vietnam, this time using a sourcing agent, lesson learned, and rebuilt the supply chain from scratch. I changed the material from cheap plastic to eco-friendly bioresin. Price went up to $29.99. I rebranded, redesigned the logo, and brought back the store. This time I wasn't alone. I brought on my college roommate, who had just been laid off, as my logistics manager. We rented a 600 square foot storage space and moved fulfillment in-house. Sales jumped again after another TikTok video went viral, this one showing a kid using the Citrus Tap with one hand. It got 1.4 million views in 2 days. I started getting bulk order requests, cafes, juice bars, and even a hotel chain in Arizona. We got a booth at a food tech expo in Chicago, and I pitched Citrus Tap to buyers from Target and Bed Bath & Beyond. One buyer actually said, "Finally, a juicer that doesn't suck." As of this month, we've sold 91,000 units. Our team is now 5 people full-time, and we're working on a second product, a modular cocktail muddler inspired by a bartender who DM'd me last year. We crossed $2.1 million in revenue last quarter, and we're profitable. I still remember that lemon flying across the kitchen. That moment of absurdity cracked something open in me, not just the desire to fix an annoying product, but the belief that I could. That maybe the difference between a dumb idea and a great business was just how long you're willing to stay in the garage with a 3D printer and a problem to solve. The best part? I drink lemon water every morning. Now, with a Citrus Tap that I designed myself, in a kitchen that I renovated using Citrus Tap profits. And I haven't broken a mug since. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I started my first real business by accident. I was 27, unemployed, broke, and living in my older brother's basement after a failed attempt to launch a music career in LA. I had exactly $214 in my bank account, a phone with a cracked screen, and a piece of junk laptop that would overheat every 45 minutes like clockwork. This all started when I stumbled into flipping junk on Facebook Marketplace. I saw someone selling a broken Dyson vacuum for $10. I offered $5 and picked it up that afternoon. I didn't know how to fix vacuums, but after 45 minutes on YouTube and a burnt thumb, I had it working again. I listed it for $60 and it sold in less than 2 hours. I didn't sleep that night. My brain was on fire. I had made more money in 1 hour than I'd made all week walking dogs around the neighborhood. The next day, I bought 2 more broken vacuums. Fixed one. Stripped the other for parts. Both sold. I was hooked. Within a month, I was running a full-scale operation out of my brother's garage. I was flipping everything: vacuums, blenders, robot mops, even coffee machines. Anything with a motor or power cord was fair game. I'd scour Marketplace and offer up from 7 a.m. to midnight, haggling, buying, repairing, selling. The money started coming in. $1,500 in my first month. $3,200 the next. By month 4, I had cleared $8,000 and was seriously considering quitting the part-time jobs I was juggling just to stay afloat. But then the garage caught fire. Sort of. I was working on a busted Vitamix when something sparked. The whole bench lit up. Turns out, stacking faulty electronics and flammable cleaning agents in a confined space is not OSHA-proofed. My brother flipped. He told me I had 2 weeks to either move the operation or get out. This ended up being a blessing in disguise. Forced to find a workspace, I rented a 300-square-foot storage unit for $150 per month. No windows, no insulation, but it was mine. I slapped some foam tiles on the floor, set up a used workbench from Craigslist, and kept grinding. The noise echoed like crazy, and the place smelled like burnt plastic and WD-40, but I felt like a CEO. Around this time, I realized that I was spending a ton of time hunting down leads. So I created a simple Google form and offered to buy broken appliances directly from people. I posted it everywhere: Nextdoor, Craigslist, local forums, and it took off. Within 3 weeks, I had a steady stream of people reaching out to me with their broken stuff. Now I had more inventory than I could handle. I hired a high school kid named Matt to help with pickups and testing. Paid him $12 per hour cash under the table. He thought it was the coolest job ever. His parents, not so much. The business kept growing. I started branding it as a repair and resale company instead of just some guy who fixes things in a garage. I called it Second Spin Tech. Clean, catchy, felt legit. I registered the LLC, got a logo from Fiverr, and even built a bare-bones website. By year's end, I had made just over $87,000 in profit. I paid off all my debt and moved into a 1-bedroom apartment. Here's where it gets crazy. I noticed a pattern. Certain brands, like Vitamix, KitchenAid, Dyson, sold faster than others, even when they were refurbished. I started focusing exclusively on premium brands. Less volume, more margin. Then I got my first big break. A local repair shop was going out of business. I saw the announcement on Facebook and offered to buy out their leftover inventory. Drove 3 hours, handed the guy $3,000 in cash, and left with a trailer full of broken appliances, spare parts, and tools. That one trip netted me almost $18,000 after repairs and sales. With that money, I upgraded to a 1,200-square-foot warehouse. Hired 2 full-time employees. Brought on a local college student to help with social media and listing optimization. Started dabbling in eBay and Amazon renewed. By the 3rd year, we were doing $430,000 in revenue and $142,000 in net profit. I was running a team of 5, had 3 vans on the road, and we'd processed over 6,000 appliances. We were no longer just fixing things. We were reducing e-waste, helping customers save money, and giving second life to tech that would have ended up in a landfill. Then the pandemic hit. At first, it crushed us. Nobody wanted to meet in person, and pickup stalled. But then, people started fixing up their homes. Suddenly, demand exploded. Our online orders tripled in 3 months. We adapted fast: curbside pickups, no-contact drop-offs, a new Shopify store. We hired remote support to handle customer service. I leaned into content, creating repair videos and building a YouTube channel that started generating ad revenue. By year 4, we crossed $1 million in revenue. I paid myself $150,000 that year and reinvested the rest. My brother, remember him, quit his finance job and joined as COO. We now have 14 employees, 2 locations, and a wait list for high-end refurbishments. We're not a unicorn. We're not trying to be. But we're profitable, we're growing, and we're helping solve a real problem. All this started because I took a chance on a broken vacuum for $5. To anyone out there sitting in a basement with a cracked phone and no clue what to do next, start small. Fix something. Sell it. Learn fast. Reinvent yourself. It won't be easy, but I swear, it's worth it. For years ago, I was living in my parents' basement in Ohio, staring at a water-stained ceiling and wondering how I ended up with $38.67 in my checking account. I had a business degree, a car with a broken heater, and a LinkedIn profile that no one seemed to care about. I was 27, jobless, and just got dumped by my girlfriend of 3 years who said, "I can't keep waiting for your life to start." I didn't blame her. I had worked 3 different corporate jobs since college, hated all of them, and quit each time with some grand idea of starting my own business. But I never followed through. I'd read startup blogs, listen to Gary Vee in the background while scrolling Twitter, and take endless notes in my ideas folder. Nothing stuck. Until one night, frustrated and ashamed, I made what felt like a throwaway decision that ended up changing my life. I was on Reddit, obviously, and I came across a post in r/entrepreneur about selling custom planners on Etsy. Not rocket science. Not sexy. But the guy said he made like $4,000 a month on the side selling digital downloads. I scoffed at first. Then I realized I'd spend hours each week designing my own planner layouts in Canva just to feel organized. It was weirdly therapeutic. Maybe I could sell those. So I created a few templates, uploaded them to Etsy, and listed them for $4.99 each. I spent a whole week obsessing over the titles, tags, and SEO because I had no money for ads. The first month, I made $26.32. I remember because it was enough for gas and a burrito. It wasn't much, but it was real. By the 3rd month, I made over $300. That's when I knew I was onto something. I started reinvesting every cent. I bought better fonts, got a pro Canva account, and paid a Fiverr guy $25 to make my thumbnails look more professional. I spent nights researching what people searched for: homeschool planner, budget planner, fitness tracker. I made new designs for all of them. A year in, I hit $2,000 in monthly sales. I moved out of my parents' house and into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus with stained carpets and walls that echoed. But it was mine. I remember sitting on the floor, eating spaghetti out of a pot, and thinking, maybe I'm not a failure. Then came the burnout. I was still working solo, handling customer service, design, marketing, SEO, and social media. I hadn't taken a day off in 10 months. I started getting migraines. Orders slowed. My creativity dried up. One day, a customer left a scathing review because they couldn't open a PDF file, and I almost cried. I realized if I didn't treat this like a real business, with systems and support, I'd burn it to the ground. So I started automating. I hired a virtual assistant in the Philippines for $7 per hour to handle customer support. I documented every repeatable task in Notion. I batch designed a month's worth of content in a week. And most importantly, I stopped checking my Etsy stats 37 times a day. That gave me space to build a real brand. I launched my own website and newsletter. I started collecting emails and offering free downloads in exchange. I grew my list to 10,000 subscribers in 9 months. I added affiliate income through Amazon and started offering small online courses on productivity. Then came the TikTok moment. I posted a 30-second video showing how I organized my week using my planner. It got 1.2 million views overnight. My store exploded. I went from $5,000 per month to $28,000 per month in 60 days. I had to pause orders twice just to catch up. I remember sitting in my car in a Target parking lot, refreshing the Shopify app and laughing like a lunatic. By year 3, I was making 6 figures. Not revenue. Profit. I hired 2 full-time designers, a content strategist, and a part-time community manager. We had Slack channels and weekly Zooms. I finally felt like a CEO instead of a guy throwing spaghetti at the wall. Now, I run a digital productivity brand that makes over $700,000 per year. I have a podcast, a YouTube channel, and we just partnered with a major lifestyle influencer for a co-branded planner line. My parents still can't quite believe it. My dad asked me last Christmas if I was still selling those internet papers. But here's what I don't talk about enough: the crushing insecurity, the imposter syndrome, the countless nights I stared at a blank screen wondering if I was a joke. Everyone glamorizes the entrepreneur title, but no one sees the 3 a.m. breakdowns or the weeks where nothing works and the bank account is flirting with zero. And I'm still scared. Every month I worry the traffic will dry up, the algorithm will change, or people will just stop caring. But I've learned something important. Fear doesn't mean stop. Fear means you're building something that matters. It's the toll you pay to create your own lane. If you're sitting there reading this in a basement, with nothing but a weird little idea and an internet connection, start. Start small, start scrappy, start scared. But start. The difference between who I was and who I am isn't talent or genius. It's that I press publish. I don't have it all figured out. But I'm not broke, I'm not stuck, and I'm not waiting for my life to start anymore. I didn't set out to become an entrepreneur. In fact, the idea of running a business terrified me. I was always the kind of guy who liked clear instructions, predictable outcomes, and a direct deposit every 2 weeks. But as life would have it, I was forced into building something I never thought possible. My name is Brian. I'm 34 now, but this started when I was 29 and completely broke. I had just gotten laid off from a mid-level marketing position at a medium-sized tech firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and I was comfortable. Then, out of nowhere, the company got bought out and half the staff was let go, myself included. No severance. Just a box and a Zoom call. I had savings, but not much. Maybe 4 months of runway if I was conservative. I applied to dozens of jobs a week. Nothing was landing. It was the middle of 2020, and the job market was a disaster. The world was frozen, and I was spiraling. One night, out of boredom and anxiety, I started organizing my apartment. I had this closet full of old electronics, cables, chargers, broken phones, routers, a graveyard of forgotten tech. I had a weird habit of never throwing anything away. I snapped a few photos of the stuff and listed it on Facebook Marketplace. To my surprise, I sold 4 things within 24 hours. A guy drove 40 minutes to buy a 5-year-old router for $20. Something clicked. I spent the next 2 weeks doing a full sweep of my apartment. I sold old books and used kitchen gadgets, vintage board games, even half-full candle jars. The money wasn't huge, but it was something. More importantly, I started to understand what made things sell. Photos mattered. Descriptions mattered. Timing and pricing mattered. I was seeing patterns. Then I had a wild idea. What if I sold stuff for other people? I pitched it first to my neighbors. I lived in a mid-rise building with mostly young professionals. I put a flyer in the elevator. I'll sell your stuff online. You get paid. I take 30%. Easy. I included a Gmail address and a QR code. I got 3 responses that day. The first was a guy moving to Chicago who needed to offload half his apartment. I made $800 from his stuff in a week. The second was a woman who had luxury handbags she no longer used. I sold them on Poshmark and learned about authentication, brand value, and shipping logistics. The third was an older couple downsizing. They had decades worth of collectibles, some of which turned out to be incredibly valuable. I named the service Clutter to Cash. At first, I ran everything from my 1-bedroom apartment. Items were stored in my hallway, living room, even the kitchen. I created a basic Google form for intake and a shared Google Sheet for clients to track their earnings. The first month, I made about $200. The second month, $400. By the third month, I knew this wasn't just a side hustle. It was a business. I built a simple website using Squarespace, wrote my own copy, added testimonials, and invested $500 in a logo and design help from a freelancer. I started running $10 a day ads targeting local Facebook users. The demand exploded. I had to hire help. I brought on a college student part-time to handle pickups and drop-offs. Then I partnered with a small storage facility and negotiated a 3-month discounted rate to hold inventory. That was a game changer. I no longer had to explain why someone's 1997 Sony camcorder was sitting in my bathtub. By month 6, Clutter to Cash was making over $12K in gross revenue. Profit margins were thin because I was reinvesting everything: software tools, contractor pay, better lighting, and photo equipment. But I was building something real. Then I made a big, risky move. I took out a small business loan for $25K. I used it to lease a small warehouse space and hired 2 full-time employees, one to handle logistics and shipping, the other to manage listings and customer service. I also developed a proprietary dashboard, built cheaply with a no-code tool, for clients to track their items, payouts, and statuses. Clients loved it. It looked legit because it was legit. A year in, Clutter2 Cash had sold over 12,000 items for 800-plus clients. Our average monthly revenue hovered between $25K $30K, with a net profit around 28%. We were growing, slowly but steadily. The key to our success wasn't revolutionary. It was trust and transparency. People hate clutter, but they hate the time and hassle of getting rid of it even more. I took away the friction and made them feel safe. Every item had photos, tracking, updates. Clients got weekly reports. They got paid every 2 weeks. No ghosting. No weird eBay scams. Just clean, structured resale. Then the press came calling. First it was a local blog, then a regional news outlet, and finally a feature on Good Morning America about the new gold rush of resale services. My inbox exploded. I had to scale again. We expanded to 3 more cities within the next 6 months. I created a Clutter2 Cash Academy to train local managers on operations and client communication. Everything was standardized. Pickup kits, photos, listing templates, payouts, branding. I was building a franchise model, even if I didn't realize it at the time. I also got smarter about tech. I partnered with a developer to create a lightweight internal CRM. It tracked inventory, synced with eBay, Poshmark, Mercury, and Facebook Marketplace, and provided analytics on pricing, turnover time, and buyer ratings. We started turning data into strategy. Certain items sold best in certain regions. We focused on that. Electronics in college towns. Baby gear in suburbs. Vintage decor in hip urban areas. 3 years after I lost my job, Clutter2 Cash had done over $4 million in gross revenue. We had 22 employees, 5 regional offices, and had processed over 80,000 items. I'd gone from broke and anxious to the founder of a rapidly scaling resale logistics company. And here's the wildest part. I still don't think of myself as a real entrepreneur. I didn't have a startup idea. I didn't raise capital. I didn't build an app or wear a Patagonia vest. I just sold a router on Facebook and followed the thread. Sometimes entrepreneurship isn't about innovation. It's about paying attention to what the world is quietly asking for and being willing to answer. I never thought a bag of rotten mushrooms would change my life. Back in 2019, I was a broke 27-year-old living in a basement in Des Moines, Iowa. I had graduated with a business degree, racked up $68,000 in student loans, and failed miserably at 2 startups. One was a mobile app for pet birthdays, don't ask. And the other was a subscription box for hot sauce that never got off the ground. By that point, I was working nights at a warehouse and delivering pizza during the day just to keep up with bills. My roommate, Jeremy, was the one who brought home the mushrooms. He was a culinary school dropout and an obsessive forager. One day, he stumbled into the kitchen, drenched and muddy, with a backpack full of what looked like moldy science experiments. "They're lion's mane mushrooms," he said, holding one out. It looked like a hairy cauliflower. "They're supposed to be good for your brain." I didn't care. They stank. But he cooked some up with garlic and butter and handed me a plate. They were incredible. Meaty, rich, like lobster and steak had a baby. And Jeremy casually mentioned, "These go for like $20 a pound at farmers markets." That made me pause. What? Yeah, people go nuts for these. I saw a guy sell out in 20 minutes last weekend. I didn't sleep that night. My brain started spinning. I'd failed at tech, failed at e-commerce. But this was different. This was simple, real, tangible. The next morning, I borrowed $200 from my dad and bought a few plastic tubs, some mushroom spawn online, and a bag of hardwood sawdust. I turned our tiny laundry room into a makeshift grow chamber. I duct-taped plastic sheeting to the walls, added a humidifier from Goodwill, and watched 100 YouTube videos on indoor mushroom farming. My first crop took 6 weeks. The entire apartment smelled like wetwood and gym socks. But when those fluffy white mushrooms started pushing out of the holes I drilled in the tubs, it felt like striking gold. I took them to a Saturday farmer's market in East Village. I only had 11 pounds. I printed out a quick sign, "Brain-boosting mushrooms, $15/pound. I sold out in an hour. The next weekend, I brought 18 pounds. Gone in 40 minutes. The third week, I jacked the price up to $18 a pound and still sold out. That's when I knew I had something. I started scaling slowly. I converted the basement into a full grow room. I bought a mini fridge and started selling to a few local chefs. One guy at a new age restaurant called my lion's mane the future of protein. I didn't know what the hell that meant, but he started ordering 10 pounds a week. The problem was, I couldn't keep up with demand. I needed more space, more tubs, more substrate. But I was broke, remember? So I did something incredibly stupid. I maxed out my credit cards and took a $25,000 personal loan under the name Mycomines LLC, a name I came up with in the shower. I leased a 1,200 square foot warehouse just outside the city and spent every dime building out a proper grow operation. I installed shelving racks, ventilation, custom humidifiers, lighting, and a walk-in cooler I found on Craigslist. I started growing not just lion's mane, but also pink oyster, chestnut, and blue oyster mushrooms. My electric bill quadrupled. I stopped going out. I stopped dating. I was up every day at 5 a.m., misting rooms, flipping bags, answering chef emails, delivering mushrooms, handling orders, and running the booth at 2 farmers markets every week. Within 8 months, I had my first employee, a retired electrician named Don who just wanted something to do. He turned out to be a wizard with timers and airflow systems. Together, we dialed in yields and cut contamination rates in half. By year 2, we were making $18,000 a month in revenue. Then the pandemic hit. Restaurants shut down. Farmers markets paused. My 2 biggest buyers vanished overnight. I had hundreds of pounds of mushrooms and no one to sell to. I sat in that warehouse, watching my bags rot, and seriously considered just walking away from it all. But Jeremy, remember Jeremy, said something that changed everything again. What if you dried them? What? Dehydrate them. Powder them. Sell it as a supplement. All those wellness freaks are into that kind of thing. So I tried it. I bought a cheap dehydrator and started experimenting. Lion's mane powder smelled awful, but it tasted neutral enough. I put some in my coffee. My hands didn't stop shaking from anxiety for the first 24 hours, but I blamed the caffeine. Still, I researched. The studies on lion's mane and cognitive function were legit. People were already paying $40-60 for mushroom supplements online. Most of them were imported and full of fillers. That was it. The pivot. I rebranded everything. Mycomines became Mycomood. I built a Shopify site. Took product photos in my kitchen. Spent $1,200 on Facebook ads targeting people into biohacking, ADHD forums, and nootropics. Sales trickled in. $120 the first day. $300 the next. A week later, some YouTuber reviewed our product and called it cleaner and more effective than any mushroom powder I've tried. I didn't even send him the sample. He bought it himself. We did $15,000 that month. By mid-2021, we were at $75,000 a month. I brought in a co-packer. Outsourced fulfillment. Signed an exclusive deal with a Canadian distributor. We hit $1 million in revenue in December. I finally paid off my loans in early 2022. Today, Mycomood employs 14 people. We sell capsules, powders, and even a mushroom-based coffee that outsells our original product. We're in Whole Foods Midwest and 3 wellness chains. I get emails from people saying it helped them get off Adderall or focus better in grad school. We're not trying to be the next Goliath. I'm still in Iowa. Still run the original grow lab for our /Andy. But every time I smell that earthy scent of fresh lion's mane, I remember that cold afternoon in our kitchen, the smell of garlic butter, and Jeremy grinning like a maniac with a dirty mushroom in his hand. He's our head of product now, and we still laugh about it. Because the truth is, the thing that saved my life and built my company came from a bag of fungus that looked like a dead Muppet. Sometimes, you don't need a billion-dollar idea. You just need to notice what's rotting in front of you and cook it. I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I didn't have a Shark Tank dream or a disruptive app idea. I just wanted to pay my rent and not have my life feel like a treadmill leading nowhere. What happened instead was a mix of desperation, luck, and dumb stubbornness that accidentally turned into a 7-figure business. It started when I got fired. I was working at a boutique marketing firm in Austin. Nothing glamorous, mostly local business accounts and some social media fluff. I was decent at my job, but after a leadership shakeup and a nosedive in client retention, the company started shedding employees like a molting snake. I got the boot 3 days before my 27th birthday. At first, I did the usual, sent out resumes, refreshed LinkedIn obsessively, told myself it wasn't personal. But after a month, nothing was landing. I burned through my savings faster than I thought possible. And it didn't help that I was too proud to move back in with my parents in El Paso. That's when I remembered the notebooks. Years ago, when I was freelancing right out of college, I used to keep extremely detailed project planners, half bullet journal, half to-do list on steroids. I created my own system to stay on track because ADHD made regular planners useless to me. I made templates for time blocking, habit tracking, client feedback logs, you name it. A few freelancer friends had asked for copies, so I used to print them out at FedEx and staple them together like a zine. It was nothing serious. With nothing to lose, I pulled them up again and thought, what if I cleaned these up and sold them as digital downloads? That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. formatting the old pages into a neat PDF. I used Canva and a free trial of InDesign. I uploaded them to Etsy with the incredibly non-catchy name Freelance Focus Pack. I priced it at $8. I didn't expect anything. The next morning, I had 3 sales. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but I hadn't told a soul. No marketing, no social posts. That $24 felt like finding cash in a jacket I hadn't worn since college. I thought maybe it was a fluke. But then I had 2 more sales that night. Then 5 the next day. The buyers were mostly other freelancers, writers, designers, even a voiceover artist. One left a review that said, "This feels like it was made for my brain. Please make more." So I did. I started adding pages, making separate themed packs, one for creatives, one for consultants, one for side hustlers. I hired a Fiverr designer to help polish the look. Sales picked up. I was making about $200 a week, which still wasn't enough to live on, but it felt like traction. I called the whole thing Neon Type. Why? I have no idea. It sounded cool and no one had taken the domain. Then I got a message from a buyer named Kaylee. She ran a small online coaching group for neurodiverse entrepreneurs. She wanted to know if I'd ever consider making a custom version for her community. That conversation changed everything. Kaylee's feedback was gold. She told me what pages confused people, what features her group loved, and what they wished I'd include. So I created a whole new edition just for them, more visuals, less text, customizable goal-setting templates, and unstructured structure for people who hated traditional planners. Kaylee shared it with her 2,000+ members. Within a week, I made $600. That was the tipping point. I leaned into the neurodiverse productivity niche hard. I started reading forums, subreddits, books. I interviewed users. I found out most productivity tools are designed for neurotypical brains, linear schedules, minimal distractions, rigid routines. That just doesn't work for everyone. So I built something different. I launched a standalone site. I took the best-selling planner packs and turned them into an interactive Notion dashboard. I taught myself just enough JavaScript to make a browser-based drag-and-drop version that looked like a mix between a game and a dashboard. I partnered with a UX designer who had ADHD herself, and we built features like focus modes, customizable timers, and priority tagging that changed based on energy levels, not time. The digital products kept selling. We added subscription features for updates and new templates each month. Then came affiliate deals with coaches and online course creators. We added a print-on-demand option for customers who still wanted physical planners. By the end of year 1, I made $87,000. Year 2, I hit $300K. At that point, I hired 2 part-time team members, one for customer service, one for design. I started offering workshops and online courses on alternative productivity systems and sold bundles of templates plus classes. I even did a speaking gig at a neurodiversity conference in Portland. Me, a guy who used to be terrified of speaking in meetings. I still hadn't taken outside funding. No ads, no viral TikTok. It was just word of mouth and solving a very specific, very real problem. That's what I always tell people who want to start a business. Forget about trying to be everything to everyone. Find a weird, underserved corner of the world and serve the hell out of it. This year, year 4, I crossed $1.1 million in revenue. Most of it is digital, so the margins are ridiculous. I have 5 full-time employees. We're launching an AI-powered task filter next quarter that analyzes your calendar and suggests changes based on your mood and past behavior. I still live in Austin. Still work from a scrappy little studio with bad Wi-Fi and too many plants. But my rent is paid early now. I bought my mom a car last Christmas. I fund scholarships for students with ADHD who want to study design. And I still use my original planner system. Only now, it lives inside a sleek, polished app that thousands of people use every day. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't gotten fired. I probably would have stayed in that job, gotten promoted once or twice, and convinced myself that was good enough. Getting kicked out of the path I thought I was supposed to be on was the best thing that ever happened to me. And all because of some doodled-up planner pages I almost forgot I made. I've always believed that success doesn't come from having the best ideas or being the smartest person in the room. It comes from being willing to outwork everyone else, being patient when no one else will be, and finding the solutions when others throw in the towel. My story started when I was broke, living on my friend's couch, and wondering how the hell I was going to pay rent the next month. Fast forward 5 years, and I run a multi-million-dollar company that specializes in tech solutions for businesses. But it wasn't always this way. It took years of struggle, failure, and being laughed at by my friends and family to get here. It all started when I graduated from college with a degree in business and a whole lot of enthusiasm. I had the perfect college experience. Grades weren't fantastic, but I was known as that guy who could network his way into any event, any opportunity. After graduation, I thought I would easily land a job at a big firm. The reality hit when I spent 3 months sending out resumes and getting 0 responses. No one was interested in a freshly minted graduate with a decent GPA and no experience. I needed to pay rent, and that wasn't going to happen if I kept waiting for that perfect job to land in my lap. One night, I was at a bar with my friend Jake, who was working as a freelance web designer. He mentioned he could make a decent living, not working for anyone in particular, but just finding clients on the side. He was self-taught and made enough to cover his rent, buy groceries, and have a little extra. He'd been doing this for about a year, and I was intrigued. How do I get started? I asked, eager to hear his advice. Jake told me it was simple, learn something new. He wasn't doing anything groundbreaking. He just understood how to build websites, and businesses needed them. The next day, I signed up for an online course on web design. I'd always been good with technology, but I had never thought about turning it into a skill that could make me money. I went from being a complete beginner to building my first website in 2 weeks. It was ugly, didn't load fast, and didn't have much functionality, but I had done it. It was a start. Over the next few months, I hustled hard. I took on small projects, even working for free to build a portfolio. Slowly, I started getting paid jobs, but it wasn't enough. I was barely scraping by. I was making just enough to cover my living expenses, and that was it. But the idea of starting a business began to grow in the back of my mind. I could keep working freelance forever, or I could turn this into something bigger. I decided to go for it. I took a risk. I convinced my mom to lend me $5,000 to start a business. The idea was simple: create a small web design agency. I built a basic website, put together a portfolio of the work I had done, and started reaching out to local businesses. I had no idea what I was doing when it came to sales or marketing, but I had a deep sense of determination. My pitch was simple: your business needs an online presence. I'll help you create one that works. I didn't have any formal business training, so I relied on hustle, a willingness to learn quickly, and sheer grit to get me through. At first, nothing happened. I spent weeks cold calling, sending emails, and attending networking events, but I didn't get a single lead. I was discouraged, but I didn't give up. One morning, I had an idea. I'd start offering my services for free in exchange for testimonials and referrals. I figured that if I could get a few people to vouch for my work, I'd have the credibility to land paying clients. I started contacting local businesses again, offering to redesign their website for free. In exchange, they would write me a testimonial and refer me to someone who needed my services. Surprisingly, a few businesses took me up on the offer. I worked like a dog to deliver quality results, and soon enough, I had a small portfolio of work to show. That was my turning point. I continued hustling. Slowly but surely, I got more clients, and the work started coming in faster. The business grew slowly at first, but then it exploded. Within 2 years, I had a team of 5 people working with me. I had to hire a project manager to handle the growing workload. and I eventually found a developer who helped me streamline my operations. I was no longer working out of my tiny apartment. We rented a small office in town. Things were looking up, but I still hadn't figured out how to scale the business. I knew that if I wanted to take it to the next level, I had to create a productized service. I couldn't continue working one-on-one with clients on custom projects. It was time to think bigger. I spent months researching and testing various software platforms that could help automate parts of the business. I was constantly learning, reading, and attending conferences, trying to figure out how to streamline operations and make things more efficient. Then came the breakthrough moment. I realized that instead of just offering web design, I could offer a full suite of services, including hosting, SEO, and digital marketing. I could bundle these services into packages, allowing businesses to choose what they needed while also generating more predictable revenue for my company. The transition wasn't easy, but I managed to find a reliable team to help execute this new vision. We launched a subscription-based model, and the revenue started to grow steadily. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. There were times when I felt completely overwhelmed. Scaling a business is incredibly difficult, and there were many nights I stayed awake, worrying about cash flow, payroll, and keeping clients happy. But with every obstacle, I pushed forward. I kept learning, adapting, and finding new ways to improve my business. As my company grew, I realized that I needed to build a brand. We weren't just another web design company. We were a solution provider, a partner to small businesses. We focused on creating value for our clients, and word-of-mouth referrals started pouring in. We began working with bigger companies, and soon enough, I was getting calls from people who had heard about us through our reputation. Today, my company is a multi-million-dollar business with a team of over 50 employees. We work with clients in various industries, providing them with the tools and expertise they need to grow their online presence. And while the journey wasn't easy, it taught me the most important lesson of all. Success isn't about having the best idea. It's about being willing to outwork everyone else and find solutions when others can't. I grew up in a small town where the idea of being an entrepreneur was almost laughable. People would talk about working at the local factory or finding a steady job at the grocery store, and that was considered success. My parents were both factory workers, and while they loved what they did, they never showed any interest in building something of their own. They believed in hard work and stability, which is fine for some, but I always felt this itch for something bigger. The turning point came when I was 17. I had just graduated from high school, and the thought of getting a real job in town made me sick to my stomach. I didn't want to spend the next 40 years of my life working for someone else. I was sure there was something more, but I had no idea what it was. It felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to leap into the unknown, but I didn't have the courage yet. I spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos about people who made it big through side hustles. I remember watching this one guy who sold t-shirts online, and within a few years, he was making 6 figures. That was when it clicked for me. The internet. The world was shifting, and I didn't want to get left behind. So, I did what any 17-year-old would do when they want to learn something. I Googled it. I typed how to start a business online, and the first result was a guide on starting an e-commerce store. I had no clue what e-commerce even meant, but I was determined to learn. I spent the next few weeks consuming everything I could find on building an online store. I watched hours of YouTube tutorials, read blog posts, and bought a few cheap courses. I learned about dropshipping, print on demand, and affiliate marketing. By the end of the month, I had a basic understanding of how e-commerce worked, and I decided to dive in. I picked a niche I was passionate about, gaming merchandise. I'd grown up playing video games, and I knew there was a massive market for gaming-related products. So, I started researching suppliers and found a platform where I could build a store without needing any technical experience. It was a basic Shopify plan, and the first product I listed was a custom gaming t-shirt. I didn't have a lot of money to invest, so I bootstrapped everything. I created the website myself, learned how to design basic graphics for the t-shirts, and started running ads on Facebook. I spent a few dollars a day just to test the waters. The first few days, nothing happened. Then, after about a week, I got my first sale. It wasn't much, but it felt like I just won the lottery. Someone, a complete stranger, had bought something I created and worked for. But that initial rush was short-lived. I quickly realized that running an online business wasn't as easy as it seemed. I spent countless hours researching how to optimize ads, improve product descriptions, and make the website more appealing. I faced rejection after rejection. I tried influencer marketing, but I was ignored. I tried blogging, but no one cared. My profits were barely enough to cover the monthly Shopify subscription. I was burning through the little savings I had and getting discouraged. But I didn't give up. I knew that failure was part of the process. So, I kept tweaking, kept adjusting. I started building an email list and offering discounts to customers who signed up. I created a social media presence and began connecting with other gamers. Slowly, I began to see small, incremental improvements. About 6 months in, I hit a breakthrough. One of the designs I had put on a hoodie started to gain traction. I had taken a well-known meme in the gaming community and turned it into a product. I posted about it on Reddit, and it went viral. Sales started pouring in. In 1 week, I made more than I had in the last 6 months combined. It was like I had finally cracked the code. I wasn't rich, but I had made something real. By the end of the year, my store had made a solid income, and I was able to hire a few people to help with customer service and shipping. My parents were shocked. They had no idea I was even making money online, and when I told them, they thought it was a fluke. They couldn't understand how it was possible to make money without a real job. The next couple of years were a roller coaster. I faced new challenges, supply chain issues, competition, changes in Facebook's ad algorithm, but I kept pushing through. I reinvested every penny back into the business, building out a full product line and improving my website. I scaled up my marketing efforts and started working with larger influencers in the gaming space. The business grew faster than I could have ever imagined. By the time I was 21, I had a small team of 5 people working with me. I had learned how to manage employees, handle customer complaints, and even deal with suppliers from overseas. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt. I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. I faced burnout from working too much, and I had to learn how to delegate tasks and trust people. But slowly, I became more confident in my ability to run a business. Fast forward to today, I'm now 25, and my e-commerce store generates multiple 6 figures a year. I no longer run ads on Facebook, and I've expanded into other areas like merchandise licensing and exclusive collaborations with top gaming influencers. My company has become one of the leading gaming merchandise brands in the industry, and I get messages every day from people telling me how they admire what I've built. It's been a long and often grueling journey, but I've learned more about myself than I could have ever imagined. I've learned that persistence is key. I've learned that failure is a part of success. I've learned that being an entrepreneur isn't about having a brilliant idea. It's about execution, perseverance, and never giving up. And most importantly, I've learned that anyone can build something, no matter where they come from or how impossible it seems. If a kid from a small town with no business experience and almost no money can do it, then so can you. Don't let fear or doubt hold you back. Keep pushing, keep learning, and when the breakthrough happens, it will be more rewarding than anything you've ever imagined. I never imagined that starting a business would be anything more than a vague idea in my mind. Growing up, I was always the quiet kid who didn't get much attention, and my parents were just normal folks working regular 9 to 5 jobs. My mom worked as a nurse, and my dad was an electrician. There was no entrepreneurial legacy in my family. In fact, the idea of running a business always seemed like something far beyond reach, something for people who had money, connections, or the right ideas. But that all changed after a fateful decision in my late 20s. I had been bouncing around different jobs since college, unsure of what I really wanted to do. I tried marketing, event planning, even working as a barista at a coffee shop in between my real jobs to make ends meet. None of it felt right. I always knew I was capable of more, but I couldn't quite figure out what more looked like. It was during one of my late-night deep-dive internet sessions that I first stumbled across the world of e-commerce and dropshipping. The concept sounded deceptively simple. Find a product that people wanted, set up an online store, market it, and let suppliers handle the shipping. I could do this, right? It seemed too good to be true. I had little savings, no real experience in business, and definitely no investor backing. But I had determination. I figured I could learn everything I needed by watching YouTube tutorials and reading articles on the internet. That would be my university, my crash course in becoming an entrepreneur. I started with a minimal investment. My initial budget was $500, which felt like a stretch. I watched hours of videos on YouTube, reading everything from marketing strategies to how to use Shopify. I had no idea how deep I was diving into the unknown. The first step was choosing a product. I wanted something unique, but also something I knew had potential demand. I ended up settling on Bluetooth headphones. They were everywhere, but I was convinced I could find a niche within the market. The next problem was sourcing. I found suppliers on AliExpress who seemed to offer decent prices, and with my meager budget, I took a risk and placed my first order. It wasn't much, just a small batch of 20 units. The first few weeks after launching my online store were a blur. I set up social media pages, ran Facebook ads, and optimized my website. The sales? Well, there were none. Not a single sale. I had read somewhere that the first month of any business is going to be tough, but I wasn't prepared for this level of silence. I refreshed my website over and over again, expecting something to change, but nothing did. At first, I thought it was just a matter of time. But after a month of no sales, I started getting desperate. I decided to increase my ad spend. I thought maybe it was the marketing that needed tweaking, so I experimented with different ads, different audiences. I even learned how to run Instagram influencers' ads, thinking they might bring in traffic. Still, nothing worked. Each new strategy felt like a shot in the dark. I reached out to every friend I had, hoping they might give me some support, but they were just as skeptical as I had been when I started. It was at my lowest point, when I was ready to give up, that I got an email. It was from someone inquiring about the headphones. They had questions about the product and wanted to know more. I responded immediately, and to my surprise, they actually ended up placing an order. I was ecstatic. I had made my first sale. It wasn't much, just one set of headphones, but it was proof that I could do this. But even after the first sale, the road was still rocky. I continued to experiment with marketing, trying different strategies. Slowly, very slowly, the sales trickled in. It wasn't until 6 months in that I finally started seeing a steady stream of revenue. By that point, I had learned a few important lessons. First, it was crucial to find a reliable supplier who would consistently provide good quality products. I had been burned a couple of times with poor quality goods, which led to refunds and complaints. Second, Facebook and Instagram ads weren't enough. I needed a more targeted approach, so I started using email marketing and built a small but dedicated customer list. The real turning point came when I made my first bulk order. I realized that the profit margins with dropshipping were very thin. If I wanted to scale, I had to buy in bulk. I took a leap of faith and spent almost all of my earnings on purchasing a larger quantity of inventory. My thinking was that with better pricing, I could offer a more competitive price while still keeping a healthy profit margin. It paid off. The sales surged. With the extra inventory came the need for a proper storage space, so I rented a small warehouse. I also hired my first employee, a friend who had been out of work for a while. As the business grew, I found myself in a balancing act. I was learning not just how to sell, but how to manage a business. I had to deal with customer service, order fulfillment, returns, inventory management, things I had never anticipated. The long hours started to wear on me, but I was determined. I couldn't go back to my old life. There was no way I was going to let this slip through my fingers. Fast forward 2 years, and my e-commerce business had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. I was no longer the person waking up in the morning dreading the next soul-sucking day at a desk job. I had built a team, expanded my product line, and established a strong brand. It wasn't easy, but it was rewarding. There were moments of doubt, moments where I wanted to quit, but I learned that success isn't about never failing. It's about getting up every time you fall and trying something new. In the end, I sold the business for a good profit. I walked away with enough to start a new venture, but the real reward was what I had learned along the way. I had gone from a guy with an idea and a small budget to a self-made entrepreneur who had learned what it takes to succeed. I wasn't rich, but I was wealthy in experience and confidence. Most importantly, I realized that the only thing standing in the way of success is your own willingness to take risks and keep pushing forward when it feels like everything is falling apart. The key, as it turned out, wasn't any one strategy or tactic. It was simply the willingness to keep moving forward, no matter what. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.